let the music play. Julie's Twitch stream gonna brighten up our day. We're a family united, bringing joy and cheer. Rocking in the chat room, feel the love right here. The countdown's ticking, anticipation rising high. With every second passing, we're ready to fly. From all around the world, we gather near and far to share in the moments under UB's streaming star. Rocking in the chat room, let the music play. Julie's Twitch stream gonna brighten up our day. We're a family united, bringing joy and cheer. Rocking in the chat room, feel the love right here. Right here.
Sitting there waiting, twiddling my thumbs. UB stream should have started by now. It's nearly one. I've been catching his shows since back in '93. But these delays got me wondering, where could that UB be? I got the blues rock pumping through my veins. The truth is taking his time, it's driving me insane. I need that riff and those soulful lips. But these delays got me wondering, what's causing UB's tricks? UB, won't you please start your stream? I've been waiting here, it's like a bad dream. Oh, UB, don't make me beg. Just strum that guitar and ease my aching head. Well, I'm sitting here waiting for the lights to turn bright. Got my controller ready, but the stream's taking all night. He's chatting away, but I'm dying to play. Give me that action, can't wait another day. Checking the clock, taking slow like a metronome. Impatiently waiting for UB to come on. I'm itching for that game, ready to dominate. These delays got me starting to hate. Oh, UB, won't you hurry up and start the show? Got my fingers twitching and my enthusiasm's flowing. This waiting ain't right, can't take it no more. I need those games, UB, open up the door. Well, you feel with your epic beat so fine, and your hair flowing down like a waterfall divine. You're a Twitch streamer with a heart of steel, but it's fate that makes your senses real. When beats bite, you take a trip to the stars. The sizzle of the grill, it heals your battle scars. And love
The following film is presented in its complete theatrical version. It was rated R by the MPAA and may not be appropriate for children under 17. It is rated TV MA LSV and contains strong language, sexual situations, violence, and nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion advised.
Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay.
Yo, check it out. Vanilla Thunder in the house.
I like steak.
Dusted, ready for bed, but full of bars flowing from its head. Got hair flowing and long. UB's dropping jokes and songs of bomb. Oh, tired, kinda like milk that's expired. Vanilla Thunder from the plains of Texas. Vanilla Thunder is coming Lexus. Vanilla Thunder, gaming catastrophe. That's just who he is. Our boy Ubi.
That's me, your boy Ubi. Yes, I am not muted. How is everybody doing? It's a Tuesday night. We are getting ready for the Big 10 live stream as we do by talking guitars, although in a more digital way. Let's go ahead and bring that music down there. How is everybody doing this evening? Hope everybody is doing okay. A little bit of a shout out and a roll call. We got Butter and Chris first in the chat. Of course, the rabbit was first in the chat. Johnny 3 Bar, we got the Muffin Man in as well. Jeremy from Strings and Pucks. Brian from Searching for Tone. 2 Yards joining us this evening as well. Johnny Bean in there. Dwight Bailey. Haven't seen you in a little while, Dwight. How you doing? There's also our good friend Steve Gunner, along with Timmy and Bluemox. How is everybody doing this evening? It's good to see each and every one of you. We do have a topic for tonight. Let's get into that. And we will go through our topic and then open it up for questions, just like we always do. So tonight we're talking about latency and buffers. Now, this really only kind of matters to you if you're using your digital sound as a live sound. If you're doing this for recording and those sort of things, not going to be such a big deal. Buffering and latency really pretty much only matters if you need to hear the sound back in real time. Like, for example, the way I do when I play, I need to hear the effects, the amp, the cab, the whole 9 yards, so I can hear what the overall sound is, so I can adjust it and play in with that sound as well. But that doesn't matter if you're just doing recording, or if you're just editing audio, or like if you're like Jeremy does, where he plays his entire audio setup plays through his amp, and so he hears his own audio beforehand. He's just using his digital to send it out to the world. So his latency doesn't matter nearly as much. But if you are somebody who needs that real-time latency to be able to hear your sound while playing, then this is going to matter even more for you. And it may matter for you. You might actually need or want it to have low latency even while you're like recording and those sort of things, because it may help you do things like line up video and those sort of things. That might also be something that makes a difference, but it's not as big of a difference to you. So anyways, what exactly is a buffer in terms of something that matters for us as a guitarist? It's kind of like a waiting room for your audio samples that come into the computer. Basically, it kind of fills a bunch of them up and then sends them all out at once to kind of smooth it out for you. So the bigger the buffer it is, the easier it is for your computer to handle processing all of that sound and all of that data. But it has to wait until that buffer gets full before it starts sending that sound to you. So that's where that delay comes from. So a smaller buffer, it doesn't have to wait as long, so it comes at you faster. But if your CPU is struggling, it may have some samples that it doesn't process properly or process at all. So you'll have artifacts, you'll have audio dropouts, you'll have that robotic sound to it that happens sometimes, that can come from having your buffer being too small. So that's why kind of like the trade-off there. Low buffer means that you have a lower latency, but more stress on your computer, whereas higher buffer means you got a more stable playback, but it's going to have more of a delay before you actually play something and hear it in your head, which is why, again, it matters mainly for people who are playing live. If you're mixing, you can run with a high buffer so that you have a good quality sound coming at you. So there are two different ways latency happens. You have your input latency, which is that starts with the amount of time it takes to convert your analog to your digital, and then the driver itself, how long it takes for that to convert all that and send it into your system. Then you've got anything that your plugins or any of your processing does that takes amount of time to take the signal, do whatever it's going to do to it, and pass it on out. And then you have the output as well. It's the reverse of the input. So the amount of time it takes for the driver to take that digital sound and then convert it again from digital back to audio for the speakers. So those sort of things. So that all of that put together is called your round trip latency, or your RTL, which is your input and your output and any additional buffering that happens because of processing. And some drivers actually have a safety buffer added into it to try to make sure that you have some good audio to work with. So that's where, if you hear me talk about, usually when people talk about latency, especially in this regard, it's actually the round trip latency they're talking about, from when the input happens, when you actually strum your guitar, through when it comes back into your headphones. So some way to look at, how can you figure out what is latency? Well, obviously latency is affected by things like, how much processing you're doing on it. But if you want to talk about the flat latency for one direction, like for example, your input, math wise, so it depends on how big your buffer is, and that's done in samples. So like a typical buffer could be 256 samples, 128 samples, 64 samples, and that is determined by the frequency of your audio, which is whether it's 48K hertz, 44 or 44.1 K hertz. Obviously, the faster your sampling happens, the more sound you get, but also the more processing it takes. So for example, if you have say 64 samples at 48K hertz, that means you have, was it 0.0013 repeating seconds? So 1.3 milliseconds just for that, just for the conversion of, or just for how much the buffer is. So just for the buffering, that's both ways is about 2.6 millihertz or milliseconds, which is not that much. So for example, that is low enough that your ear won't even detect it. But that's only at 60 samples. And most modern CPUs, unless you've got a really beefy one, can't really handle that. You'll start getting dropouts in latency because it can't keep up with the speed on that. So kind of a feel type threshold. It depends for everybody that's out there what is and isn't a latency that you're good with. Most players start to really kind of feel latency. You'll start to feel a little spongy, a little soft at around 8 to 12 milliseconds or so. Anything less than 6 milliseconds feels like you're sitting in front of your amp, basically. Anything over 15 to 20, that's where it starts to feel like kind of like a slapback echo, kind of a delay. And that's where people start getting that disconnect between where you're playing and, how it feels for where it's coming back at you. But again, that really depends on your own personal ability to deal with latency. Like, I'm actually used to latency a lot more than other people, so 20 doesn't really start feeling mushy to me. It needs to be up in the more than 30 range. But somebody who's only ever played with an amp and has only ever played right in front of an amp, 6 or 7 milliseconds might start to feel a little soft to you. A little rubbery, because it's just not as snappy for when you pluck a string and when your ear is hearing it. Now, why does sample rate matter? Well, higher sample rates lowers the amount of um, audio that's lost, because the way obviously analog, you're constantly hearing that wave of sound coming to you. The way digital works is it slices the sound up into um, into samples of the sound. That's why it's called samples. And so the more samples, the more quickly it's looking at where is the waveform at. So it gets a little more accurate as to what the analog sound would be. So a higher sample rate is a better quality of sound. So in other words, it's more closer to being an analog sound. But by the same token, that's also more processing your computer has to do. So the sweet spot for it is usually 41.1 or 48K samples. That's where it sounds what would be considered basically CD quality. 96K is better quality, but again, you're starting to get to the point where your hardware has to keep up with it. I run 44.1 for my system just because I'm trying to keep the latency as low as possible. And when I'm playing across the internet, obviously YouTube puts a lot of compression and those sort of things, and you're not going to get as quality of a sound when I'm playing it through there anyways. Now, your driver matters so much more than other things as far as latency is concerned. Whether you're using ASIO for Windows or Core Audio for Mac, they're both designed for low latency drivers. But for Windows, though, if you're not using ASIO, if you're using WM or the various Windows architecture, those are high latency. They add a bunch of latency on top of everything else. And it's almost impossible to get it low enough of a latency that it almost sounds real time for you. Now, again, as I said earlier, there are actually there's safety buffers that are added in a lot of the ASIO that's out there and the interfaces that are out there that will add additional buffer size so that it will try to make sure that you have a clean sound. For the JREG, for example, we use the Focusrite, and it has a safe mode, and I will turn that off because obviously we're trying to tweak as much real time as possibly can be out there. So, but that's actually why you can have two totally different interfaces that are running at the same buffer rate, but they'll be completely different for their real time or for their round trip latency, because one of them may be adding additional samples that you don't know about because of the fact that it's using like a safe mode sort of thing. And then, of course, depending on what you're doing with your audio chain, your amp sim and your IRs are really heavy with adding latency to it. Plugins that oversample, in other words, if they try to add additional sound into it by doing what's called an oversample, which is to create additional samples that weren't there before, that will add CPU and latency. Some plugins will oversample by 2 times or 4 times or 8 times. The more plugins you put, even if you put a bunch of small plugins that don't have a lot, they will that FX grows. So the longer your FX chain stack gets, the more latency and the more CPU that you're using on it. And then it's things that are even outside of your control. Like, for example, especially if you're running on Windows, your background apps. If you got a bunch of browser tabs open, OBS doing encoding, OBS with a bunch of browsers inside of it. If you're running Zoom, all these things can also sap your CPU, especially if you've got a weaker CPU. And cause what could be a clean sound to not be as clean. And those, you'll need a bigger buffer to keep the sound clean. But again, then you're adding latency into it. So there are ways to get around latency problems. For example, if I had a lot of latency problems and I was okay with it, if I could play just by hearing what I'm playing without actually hearing all of my effects and my amps on top of it, most good interfaces like the Focusrite have what's called a direct monitor, which all it does is instead of sending your playing, it still sends your guitar and your mic or whatever you got plugged into it into your computer, but it also reroutes those right straight back into your headphones without any processing. So you can actually, that will hear, that is a full real time, about 1 or 2 millisecond delay. It's immediate, it's snappy. So if you can play without hearing what your actual in sound sounds like, you just want to hear the strings themselves being plucked and those sort of things, then you can do that and get around latency, especially if you have a big monster chain with a lot of latency in it. I can't do that. I need to hear the distortion. I need to hear the gain. I need to hear all that. But that is something that is available. It's specifically because manufacturers know, hey, latency is an issue, especially for people trying to play live. Look, there you go. Basically, the troubleshooting, if you've got latency issues, obviously make sure your drivers are correct, the newest possible drivers for SEO. Then make sure your buffers are set where they should be. Make sure your CPU is not being way too much, not being bogged down by a bunch of other things. Close out so that you have only the things you need there. If it may also be things like your USB port is too slow, it may be adding additional buffer problems to it. You may need to plug into another port to see if it's better or not. And yeah, anything that you would normally do to make your computer run faster theoretically could help your latency. So make sure you're on a high performance power plan. Make sure you're plugged into a wall if you're on a laptop. Those sort of things. So, and then if you've checked all that and it still feels a little off, go check your the plugins themselves for oversampling. Check your driver to see if it's got safety mode and that sort of thing. Basically, to put it all together, buffers are kind of like a knob that trades speed for stability. That's just the kind of the too long, didn't read sort of thing for the teaching. So that finishes the lecture portion tonight. We'll open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions about latency or anything else with audio? Basically you're asking 2 yards, are there certain DAWs that handle latency better than others? DAWs themselves handle latency the same. The difference is how heavy is the DAW in your system. In other words, when you're running the DAW, is the other functions of the DAW using up your CPU and making it harder for the processing to happen in a fast time? So the DAWs with the more minimalist DAWs to me are the ones that are best for that. But again, a DAW is only going to matter if you need that real-time sound. In other words, if you're recording, a lot of folks can just do a take without having to hear what it sounds like and then play back that take and hear what it sounds like. Matter of fact, I used to do that back when I was doing my records, when I was doing significantly much more processing on the guitar, especially when I was still using the acoustic. I would do a take without hearing what I'm hearing and then play it back and hear what it sounds. And in that case, latency doesn't make even a slightest difference. I have never used PreSonus Studio One, so I couldn't give you any sort of a firsthand info as to whether it's a one that's heavy with resource utilization or not. The ones that I've run are Reaper, obviously, because everybody runs Reaper at some point. Cakewalk, whatever the newest one, Sonar, I believe, is the newest one from Cakewalk, which is basically the old Cakewalk with microtransactions. And I've also used Adobe Audition in its multi-track as a DAW, which is not technically a DAW, but it works as a DAW. The 2i2 is actually very good, especially if you're getting the anniversary edition is a Generation 4, and those are really good. The Generation 3 2i2s are all right. For the record, the interface that I use is the Focusrite Scarlett Solo, and it's the 3rd generation. So it has a couple of issues, but they aren't that bad. All right. Any other questions anybody would like to ask this evening? Also, for all of you who jumped in and joined us as I was doing the teaching, PreSonus does make some audio interfaces, yes. For those of you who jumped in while I was in teacher mode, in professor mode, I apologize for not greeting you. Thank you for joining. I very much appreciate each one of you. I see Keith H. has joined us. I know other people joined in too. So, again, I apologize if I didn't greet you individually. Brandy, obviously, my beautiful wife. I did not greet her either, but I apologize. Somebody else jumped in there too. David joined us. Hey, David, how you doing? Yeah, from the way it looked, the PreSonus looked pretty good. I haven't used a PreSonus. The ones I've used are the Fifine, which doesn't have an ASIO driver. I don't. It's better than what I was using before, but if you could find and afford anything else, I would not. I would use something other than it. Then obviously the Focusrite I have here. I've also used the IK Multimedia Core. What's it? The Duo, the iRig Pro Duo. And it's pretty decent, although it's more designed for a mobile interface. All right, last call for questions. I'm looking out into the audience and I see a lot of glassy-eyed stares because I dropped a lot of hard information on you. The difficult to digest info there. Yes. ASIO, of course. It's always about taking it in the buffer. The wind is howling here in Iowa, and we've got a probably going to be hit by winter storm Friday. So first real snow is going to be coming up. Yeah, man, save those for Ted. You got like 7 minutes, man. 192 is a definite sweet spot. Will you be tested on tonight's info or tonight's lesson? No, there will be no quiz over tonight's lesson. That would imply I know what I'm talking about. As for mine, I run 256 for my buffer size. Again, I'm able to be a little more used to the latency, and I need the audio clarity. So, but anything more than that is too much for me to play live. Really, you gotta you didn't bring me a beer, man. Now I thought we were friends, Chris. Brandy has posted a short showing our progress on the Groat, so it is coming along. She's really close to being done with the pick guard. After that, I will need to drill and tap the screw holes for the pick guard. Then we'll put everything together. I've got to put the new tuners on it, the new string trees on it, and then get the obviously mount the bridge back in again. The bridge hardware, the bridge pickup and the neck pickup as well. All right, so it is 5 minutes till stream time for Ted. It is time for us to jump over there. Hopefully everybody got their learn on today. And Ted's Live is in the pinned comment up top. And I'm also dropping it in chat right there. So see everybody over at Ted's Live. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today. And yeah. Man, you think I'm going to turn down food? You're wrong. All right, we'll see you over at Ted's live stream. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us today. And yeah, let's get over it, Jack. Thanks for showing up, and we will see you on our next stream.